So this video is going to be about bandsaw maintenance, and I'm really going to do kind of a complete overhaul of this bandsaw. This is the Jet 14-inch bandsaw, and I've probably had this bandsaw for about 15 years, and the only thing I've done to it is change the tires one time. So a couple weeks ago I fired this thing up to cut a piece of wood, and it threw the blade through the tire, scared the crap out of me, and I realized it was time to do some necessary maintenance to this bandsaw. So let's take a look at my bandsaw. I'll show you some of the obvious things that are wrong with it. Then I'll show you the new tools I got, and then we'll get into the installation and the upgrades. So there's Jake. Jake likes to be in the videos, and he likes to kind of just lay wherever, and he's laying right in the middle of where I'm trying to film. But anyways, I'll work around him because he's a good friend to me. But hey, there's the bandsaw. It's the Jet 14-inch again, and it has a 6-inch riser block. And again, I probably had this thing about 15 years, and the only maintenance I've done to it is put some tires on it. So let's take a look at some of the issues that we have with this bandsaw. So one of the obvious issues with this bandsaw is this tire, and both of them are about in this kind of condition. So when they start to look like that, they really need to be replaced. You could probably take you can probably clean that up a little bit, maybe get a little bit more life out of it, but it's really lost its kind of its elasticity, and like I said, it came off of the wheel. So I'm going to put new tires on. So these are the old blade guides here, and I don't know if you can see that bearing. I'll show it to you when I get it off, but this thing doesn't want to spin, and it's just pretty shot. So you wonder why it didn't work right, and that's probably why. Those are the factory bearings and factory blade guides. Also have a little bit of surface rust building up on this table, and I'm going to try to wire wheel that off once we get into this project. So let me show you some of the new parts that I bought. So first off, I bought this Carter guide. It's really a blade guide upgrade kit. Heard lots of good things about this kit, and it's pretty pricey, but it's supposedly the best out there on the market. I believe that Jet makes its own version of this, and it's a little bit cheaper, but I went with the Carter guide upgrade kit just because of the reputation. So it comes with a new blade guard there, and also some instructions, and these I will probably need. So also bought a new blade. That's an Olson blade. I've never used those. I typically have used the Timberwolf blades, but these are a little bit more affordable. This is the 105-inch 3/16 blade, 10 teeth per inch. Got a new tensioner spring there, and a new V-belt, 4 feet in length. Never used these before, but these are supposed to reduce a lot of vibration, and my bandsaw has a lot of vibration, so I'm hoping that will help. Then the last thing that I bought here were these urethane bandsaw tires. So one thing to note real quick before we start getting into this thing is just make sure you've got it unplugged from a safety perspective. You wouldn't want to do this with the machine plugged in the case that it turned on or you hit the power button accidentally. All right, so there's the upper wheel. Let's get these tires on. So that's what it looks like with the tire on, and there's the new tire versus the old tire. And one key thing that I learned with these is even though they're on, make sure that they're seated on both edges, meaning this edge here and also the far edge as well, because they have a tendency not to sit down, and I had to work around this a little bit with a screwdriver to get it to sit down, but looking pretty good. So one last thing to note about the tires, and then we'll move on to the blade guides, but the traditional way that I've done this in the past is soaking these things in warm water to get them to stretch out, but the instructions warn you not to do that, and I don't know if that'll show up on the video, but right there in red, basically it says there's a lot of bad information about heating up tires to install them. You do have to stretch them out a little bit, and I did that simply by putting it under my foot and lifting up on it a couple of times, and that did the trick. So let's see if we can figure out how to get this off. Oh wow. Okay, that came off real easy. Now I can show you a little bit better. So this thing is just, it's pretty tired, pretty worn out. And again, that bearing, you can't hardly spin it at all. Alright, so this piece here holds the blade guard on, and it's just got that one set screw right there, and then these two hold the blade guard on. So that should just slide up like this, which it does. So this piece goes on with these. There's 3 set screws, and you can see them there, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, there's the upper assembly, and that really went in easy. So nothing on here is really tight. Everything's kind of just barely set in there, and that's because I know there's going to be a lot of adjustments to make once I get the actual blade on. So let me get this table off and let's look at that bottom assembly. Alright, there's the bottom assembly, and then my guess would be it's held on by those 2 screws right there. So let's get those off. Alright, so there's the bottom assembly. That's the original jet equipment, and as you can see, this bearing is actually a little bit better, but wow, these things are really old. Definitely time to do this. Okay, as far as ease of installation, I don't think it gets much easier than that. Now, again, I know I'm going to have to make a lot of adjustments here with these things, but they're on, and that was pretty easy. All right, next on the list is this Cobra coil. This is also a Carter product, and it is designed to replace your factory blade tensioner in there, and it looks fairly easy to install. I think I just have to unscrew that all the way and maybe lift up on that. So if you change this out, make sure you don't have a blade on there, because you're going to need to lift this whole piece up, and if you have a blade on the wheel, it's going to prevent you from doing that. So let's see how hard this thing is to put in. Alright, there it is installed. That was actually pretty easy to do as well. So this is going pretty smooth right now, and we'll test that out when we put the new blade on. Alright, I'm going to use this wire wheel now and see if I can clean up this table a little bit. Alright, so here's what the table looks like now. And that was definitely the most complicated part of this project so far. That took about an hour, and I could probably stand and do a little bit more, but a huge improvement over the way it looked, and we're getting one step closer. So the next thing I'm going to do before I put the table back on is put the blade on and make all the adjustments I need to do. Now, I won't show all the adjustments, but I'll show you a couple of them once I get a little further along. Alright, there's the bottom assembly, and I believe I have that all adjusted. So there's the top assembly, and I've adjusted all that as well, but I did leave one loose. So there's an Allen head right on the front of these bearings, and this thing essentially will slide all the way out, and that's how you adjust the bearing to where your blade is. So I'm going to get this last little bearing assembly tightened up, and then I'm going to put the table back on, and we're about ready to fire this thing up. Alright, so the last thing I'm doing today is installing this V belt. I've never used one of these before, but they say that they cause a lot less vibration than just a regular belt. So one of the things that was definitely causing some vibration in this bandsaw was the factory belt. So that's the factory belt. It's 15 years old. It was pretty loose actually when I took it off. So to get this thing off, and I don't even know if I can show it, but you can kind of see them right there. There's 4 mounting screws, and there's a slide. The motor slides along that track there, and that's how you adjust the tension of the belt. So they are 13 millimeter, and I got all 4 of them loosened. Do not take them off, just loosen them up, and then the motor will slide up and down. Now once you take the belt off the motor and loosen the bolts, it will fall all the way to the floor, or all the way to the bottom of that slide. So I reinforced it with a bottle jack down there. So this V-belt is a little bit smaller. It's a 4-foot belt, and it's a little bit smaller than the original belt. So I hope that this belt works. Otherwise, I'm going to have to reinstall the factory belt and just get it a lot tighter than it was, because it was pretty loose. So let me see if I can get this belt on. All right, that was a pain, but I got the V-belt on, and it was, I don't think it's too tight. I think that's fine. Plus, I think being a new belt, it will loosen up as it gets broken in. So it looks good, but the, you know, the motor's in the highest position that it can be in. So I should have got maybe a 5-foot V-belt, and then, because you can take the links out and just adjust the length of them, but maybe a 5-foot would have been better. Let's see if we can make this work. All right, so I got everything put back together. I think I've got it all adjusted, and let's turn it on. It's plugged in. Let's turn it on and see what happens. Alright, well that took a little bit of work, and it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. The blade guides went on pretty easy. The tires went on once I stretched them out pretty easy. I think the hardest part of this was definitely the most time consuming part was grinding down the table here, and also putting on that belt. That was just tight. Getting your hands in those tight places is kind of hard to do. So one other thing I bought for my bandsaw is this light. Now this is an LED. Actually, it's a sewing light. Obviously, I'm not going to use it for sewing. It's got a magnetic base. It's really strong magnetic base. Kind of surprised at that. And the other thing I'm surprised about is how much light this thing puts out. So that makes a big difference when you're cutting with a bandsaw, especially if you're doing some intricate cuts. That's a lot of light. It's very nice to have. So I'll put a link to this thing down in the description box as well, because it's worth the 15-16 bucks I paid for it. Yeah, so overall I'm pretty happy with the way this project turned out. I got my bandsaw tuned up. I got one of my best tools in the shop back in business, and I can't wait to get into it and start using it. So I hope this video helped, and if you like the video, if you like the content of my channel, hit that subscribe button. And hey, thanks for watching.